Welcome to Senior Living 101, where we get expert takes on the environments where seniors live, work, play, heal, and thrive. I'm your host, Trey King, and as usual, just a reminder, everybody you see on this show is a member at Sage. So if you want in on the brilliant minds action that you're seeing in this and other episodes, feel free to check us out at sagefederation.org. I'm joined today by Shannon Remaley, and in this session, we're going to talk about humility and empathy in design for aging. Um, Shannon, actually, first, could you tell me a little bit about yourself?
Yeah, thanks, Trey. Yeah, it's great to be here. Again, Shannon Remaley. I'm a principal and studio leader at Meyer. We are an interior design, architecture, and FF&E procurement firm in Philadelphia. I've been doing senior living design now for about 25 years, so near and dear to my heart. I started off graduating college and wanting to be in hospitality design, landed at a firm and quickly got put into senior living and then just fell in love with it and stayed there since. So, yeah.
Incredible. Well, yeah, like I mentioned just now, we're going to be talking about humility and empathy today. So, yeah, I'd like to kick us off by just asking what humility and design means to you, Shannon, more
Yeah.
broadly, and maybe we can tie it back to senior living.
Yeah, absolutely. So I think this is a great topic. It really taking the time to think about the people that we serve every day in senior living. And since it
Yeah.
is so human focused, I thought we'd start off with a story to kind of dive into it that I had just had with one of our clients the other week and I thought related nicely. So I was talking with a client and they are an operator and they were sharing how they had just opened up a new development, a building, obviously very excited, proud of it, all the time and energy and attention to detail they had put into it. And they were welcoming a new resident and really touched base with her, asked her, like, how's it going? How do you feel about things? And then the resident responded. It was really nothing that they thought she would respond with. It was not about care or food or programs
Mm.
or activities, but she just responded that, the hardest part of moving into this apartment has been leaving my home that I raised my children in for 42 years.
Yeah.
And right, this is an operator that does this day in and day out. They know what they're dealing with. But still, that operator had shared with me, I took a minute and really paused and just thought about this person is navigating one of the biggest transitions that they ever will in their life. And so I think that story, he was sharing that with me, like I said, a couple weeks ago. And I was like, this is exactly what we're talking about with humility and empathy in senior living and just really taking that time to think about what people are experiencing. So
Yeah, no, it really highlights our role as, leaders in design for aging to
yeah.
broker that transition. It is one of the biggest trends. It's like getting married,
Yes,
getting born, and
yes, yeah,
and
yeah,
what happens after your career and when you start to think about care and end of life decision
yeah,
making. These are some of the biggest like moves you make in your life. And yeah, that's actually kind of what got me into it too. It's one of the biggest things that people don't talk about.
yeah,
And I think it's really like awesome that, we're able to have conversations like these.
yeah, yeah. So I have a couple slides I can share as we talk through it. I'll go
Yeah.
ahead and do that now. All right. All right, so this really just echoes what we were just talking about, right? Humility is really speaking to that you don't understand their experience and being open to that. And then empathy is, yes, I'm going to understand it. And so I think that's just really like spoke to the story I just shared right there. So,
Yeah,
uh,
100%.
yeah. So as we talk about, maybe we'll touch base on humility first, just really asking ourselves in senior living, right? Who is the expert in senior living? There's so many people that take a role to bring a senior living community together and to keep it up and running. As everyone knows, there's the developer, the operator, the designer, right? Everyone is bringing expertise into it. But when you really talk about who the expert is in senior living, right, we're really talking about the resident. And I
Yeah.
think that as we talk about humility, right, that's being comfortable that we all bring our expertise, but being open to other viewpoints, such as the resident. No one knows what it's like to live their life like they do. So, all the expertise and regulations and operations, design standards, best practices, it's all matters so significantly. But humility reminds us that our expertise shouldn't replace listening to the resident. So, I think it's always good
Yeah.
just to start there, start with why we're all in senior living and why it speaks to us. So,
Yeah. couldn't agree more. And yeah, actually, a similar conversation I had been having with a couple of industry partners recently was, every community is different. You could know I guess the sort of, data-driven, uh, optimal decisions to make when you're designing like a memory care wing or something. But if you're not folding that into conversations about how is this fitting in the community you're designing, like so many life plan communities are all like, complete communities, and we should
Yeah.
be thinking about them as, yeah, individual personalities, it's
Uh,
not what works for one is not going to work for another. Yeah, I
yeah.
really love that.
Yeah, that's beautiful. So, yeah, so some of the stuff, as we start to look at humility, some of the stuff that we try to build into our design team as we're approaching things is just starting with questions. So, as we talk about what could people coming into senior living really think of, start with like really small habits, right? How can you ask yourself different questions? So, most of the questions that we ask in projects are like, does this work? And then when you ask questions like that, it's very much from your side of the table. And so we try to just reframe some of our questions, right? Those questions are valid and need to be asked. Does this work? But just trying to rephrase some questions like, how will someone feel doing this? You just talked about how every community is a little bit different. And so, how will someone
Yeah.
feel doing this every day? Ask those questions out loud with your team and really take the time to think through them and incorporate them into the conversation. So, you know, we don't always know what residents want, so trying to ask them what they want. I know I'm fortunate enough to have some people in my personal life that fit into the demographic of what would be in senior living, and I'm always trying to even ask them like, if you went there, would you like this? Would you not like this? And just being open to ask different questions and what matters most to them, and looking at it from just not our side of the table, but their side of the table as well. And what are we missing? Right? Always saying,
Yeah.
what are we missing? There's always something new to think about in senior living. And so just because it worked on the last project doesn't mean it'll work here. There's not something new to explore. So I just like to incorporate that into projects in the team and just asking questions a little differently. So,
Yeah.
yeah.
I love it. Actually, I'll drill down on this a little bit. Let's talk like specific tools that we as architects and designers have in our toolbox to make, I think it's one thing to say like, yeah, we're designing with humility, and like how does that look when the rubber hits the road? Like one example that I'm thinking of is like, we're I'm a big advocate for having resident-led town halls, and like
Yeah.
sometimes they're a little messy. Like I'm sure you've
Sure.
done similar things, and it's not always super clean, and you get a bunch of contradictory opinions.
Yeah.
But that's the sort of fact finding that I think makes for really good design for senior living. Yeah, I don't know. You want to talk about maybe some other examples?
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. It's funny you mentioned that. So, yeah, we do the resident committee meetings, right? So, whether it's
Yep.
the facilities committee or the decor committee that'll come in and kind of look at projects that we're doing them. Like you said,
Yeah.
sometimes they can get a little messy. There's lots of commentary and
Hmm.
feedback, but I always walk away with them with something different. And sometimes I'll bring designers and team members that aren't even on the project just to come and hear the feedback because you start to hear things that are so important and you're like, okay, I can't overlook that here. One I just did, they had a very passionate resident group on artwork. And so
Yeah.
that was something like we knew at this community, maybe not at the next one, but at this community, as we do this renovation, artwork is something that is very personal to this group of
Yeah.
residents. And so we have to listen to that. And, maybe not to the operator or developer, but to them it is, and it's their home. And so yeah, very much so. I always love the resident committee meetings. You always learn something, right?
You do, and it like almost always. Yeah. Yeah. To your point, they are like, um, they add often to project timelines and like
Yeah.
can, add complication to it, but I also love them at the same time because that's exactly how you figure out exactly what this
Yeah.
community needs and wants. And
Yeah.
yeah, I've actually also been working with a client who had, I think they had something like 60 different committees, and it was awesome. Every committee that we met with
Yeah.
had their own personality, and we took something away, and I think that's kind of our job as designers to like, hey, like give us all of your contradictory,
Yeah.
you know,
Yes.
thoughts about what makes your community great, and we'll like weave it into a beautiful tapestry that you're going to
Yeah.
live in. Yeah,
Yeah. I mean, you'd want it in your own home, right? You'd want someone to do
exactly.
what you want. So it makes
Yeah,
complete sense. So yeah.
yeah, yeah. No, that's awesome.
Yeah. Yeah, so we can move over to empathy, right? So we talked about humility, kind of you're open to that there's things you don't understand, and then really diving into empathy. How can we incorporate that into senior living design? Because as you mentioned earlier, it's like you can't just be like, be more empathetic, right? It really is
Right.
something that happens over time and
Yep.
experiences. So while we can't literally walk in a senior's shoes, we, try to take the time to better understand it first experience. As we talked about, like what are tactics that you can use. I know we really do like to spend time in the communities. So often we'll go to the communities and spend a few days and nights there and
Yep.
really, dine with the residents, walk with the residents, meet with them, do their activities. I think that's a great tactic if you have the ability as a design firm or whatever your involvement with senior living is to just really try to get into their shoes as much as possible.
Yeah.
Uh, I remember when I did early in my career at a community I stayed at, I spent the day in the wheelchair. So the whole day I navigated
Yeah.
in the wheelchair, and how quickly you notice that code compliant is not necessarily human compliant, right?
100%. Oh my
Yeah,
gosh. Yeah, this is a soapbox that I've gotten on before.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah, it is. It really is. And a lot of that stuff is not like, you're not thinking, not let alone the resident, you're also not thinking about the caregiver who's like maybe got to reach all the way across the shower and get soaked in order to give somebody like an assisted bath. Yeah.
yes, yeah.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I remember that, just the floor transitions and it is code compliant, but to get through it, and then you think about how that translates into their day. And if it's hard to do something, if they might not do it, and then it takes away their independence and choice. And
Yep.
so trying to put ourselves in their shoes as much as possible, I think is a good way. Um, I remember I broke my toe last summer, my pinky
Oh
toe, such a
man.
small thing, right? You don't think you really need it much, but you do. And I remember seeing changes in my habit, like as it was hard to walk, I didn't go outside as much. I didn't want to bother people, even though they're happy to help. And you think about like the harder your physical environment is or the physical challenges you have, it does change behavior. And so it's our job to try to take away the physical barriers as much and,
Yeah.
putting experiencing it really helps do that. So
Yeah, I'm really glad you framed that in terms of choice and independence because I feel like we come back to that every episode. That's like, that's what we're designing for, right? And it's the stuff that we take for granted as like activities of daily living
yeah,
and just, existing in a community that are really hard to it's hard to like detach yourself from your current lived experience. And
yeah,
I guess you could say that, humility and empathy are table stakes for any architect. I think it's even more important for senior living designers and architects because it's not necessarily intuitive. Like I am not wheelchair bound. I don't have arthritis that severely limits my ability to
yeah,
get out and hang out with all my buds.
yeah,
Yeah.
yes, yeah, yeah. We've also, I don't know if the listeners are familiar, we'll do dementia live type experiences where you can go and really they alter kind of, they put gloves on and glasses on and things on your feet, headphones, and then they ask you to do tasks in the community. I don't know, Trey, have you ever done one of these or
Oh
heard?
yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, we do
Right.
we do a very similar thing. And it's really cool. Yeah, yeah. Finish your thought.
Yeah,
It sounds
no,
like
but
we
it's
do a
like,
pretty similar like kind of yeah.
yeah, you try to like fold laundry, right? They ask you to do something simple like fold laundry, and then, they put all of this on you to try to mimic what it's like to have dementia and try to experience your space and talk to other people and connect. And
Yeah.
again, it can't be an exact replication, but just trying to understand that I've done it quite a few times, and no matter how many times I do it, it still resonates with me on how difficult like a simple task can be, and how
Yeah.
you could have the tendency to disconnect because it's very difficult. So just doing whatever we can do to try to help with that. So, yeah.
Yeah, yeah, I totally agree. And yeah, so we've done a similar thing, and one thing that we're like kind of, that especially like I think our senior living team is talking a lot about is just, how that because I guess it's not a direct one-to-one, but I think you're right. It's a really great tool for like establishing a baseline of empathy. And then, what we're talking about is like, hey, how can we take that and turn it into like a journey mapping exercise and say like, okay, like what, what is a like sun up to sundown look like
It
for
looked like,
every
yeah,
individual, regardless of where they are in the community. Yeah, and like it totally feeds each other. I think it's really cool that you guys are doing that. Yeah, I think
yeah,
I honestly I think every like senior living
yes,
designer should be doing stuff like that.
yes.
It's
No,
amazing.
I agree. It's like it
Yeah.
just makes it it hits closer to home when you're actually going through something like that.
Yeah.
So yeah, yeah.
Yeah. 100%.
And we're talking about design and architecture, but also, right, there's caregivers, there's operations, there's so many components that come into a building, and all these things that we're talking about really translate over to all those aspects of it. So yeah,
Yeah, yeah. And honestly, I think in addition to just like building an amazing community, I think there's also sort of value from like putting my CFO hat on. I think
yeah,
there's some value in saying, hey, like what amenities are getting underutilized on your in your community and what like, what is worth expanding. Like that's the kind of like, I know, all of my clients are really tuned into their communities, but it's just great to get another layer of information about stuff like that.
yeah, yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah, well, you kind of lead us right into as you're talking about like connection. So,
yeah,
as you know, thinking about humility and empathy, it's like really hard not to talk about connection, right? We talked about social connection and the different spaces and programs that go into a building. And I recently had a designer, we're renovating a community, and we'll often go and spend a few days there to understand the specific, community and everything that they're looking for there. And she was
yeah,
visiting for a few days, and she was telling me the story when she came back. She had lots of takeaways, but one that she shared was that she was sitting in the like game area, and there was a gentleman there who was calling and texting people to come play chess with him, and no one was coming. Like she could overhear that like no one could make it, and she was really feeling for this gentleman. And then eventually
yeah,
another resident came down, and she had later learned that her son was visiting that other resident, and he had heard the phone call come in. And encouraged his father to go down and play chess with the other resident, which I thought
mm,
was just so nice. You talked about like what spaces are being used and not
yeah,
used.
yeah,
And so like that there was a place for this person, this resident that he wanted to play chess. There was a place for him to do that and ignited that engagement in him, right? And then his friend came down and did that with him. And I thought that was, as you talked about that, I just thought of that story because it was a place that brought that, like that place being there brought them together to connect.
yeah,
And as she overhears this, it's you talked about they're people first, right? So they are. So we often say residents, but we're all just people trying to navigate our lives wherever we are and whatever phases we're in. So
yeah.
yeah,
No, 100%. And like that's what we're designing. We're designing those
yeah,
moments, right? Like
yeah.
that's
I know.
I love hearing stories like that.
Yeah,
Yeah, and similar you could probably potentially infer this about me, but I whenever I'm on site talking about a repositioning or a new building, yeah, I'll stop pretty much everybody in the hallway and just like ask them what they think. Like, hey, what do you like? What is your like what
yeah,
do your like best days here look like? And you
yeah.
know, that's always in the back of my head when I'm like scheming.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah,
When you say that, I think of sometimes my favorite people to talk to is the sales and marketing team, and sometimes I'll ask them to take me on a tour as a
yeah,
prospective new resident. And then you start to see when you're doing a renovation, like what are they really selling there? And then you learn like what are people reacting to or not reacting to. Again, tying back to empathy and humility, like what is resonating with people, what's creating connections for them. So there's
yeah,
so many like simple things like we talked about, whether it's being in the community, trying to do some of these live interactions, talking with people, asking questions differently. Yeah, so it's really great.
yeah, yeah. No, and to your point, sometimes, you know, there will be like a Venn diagram of agreement between a marketing team and a resident committee, and
Yeah,
then it becomes a really great conversation for everybody involved because we'll put them together and say like, okay, it's honestly kind of great that you're not agreeing because
yeah,
there's an opportunity to find like, this is the time to be digging all of that stuff up and we can like find a really great solution that like yeah, maybe to your point to bring up a decorating committee again, like maybe every Christmas they need
yes,
space to like do all of their holiday programming and like that's, that's overlapping with a really high
Yeah,
need time for office space for another group. Like, yeah,
yeah,
I love that stuff. That's so cool that you guys are doing it too. Yeah.
yeah, I think so. Yeah, and we talked a little bit about post occupancy. I think that's
Yep.
something that we definitely do as well. We like to go back to community 6 to 12 months after and really bring everyone together. We were talking about marketing, operations, dining, equity
Yeah.
partners, operators, developers, and then like, what's working, what's not working. And I think a big part of that is then us as designers having humility and being open. Like this isn't criticism, this is feedback, this is valuable to continue to
Yeah.
learn and to better senior living as a whole for what we're all trying to do for the resident in the market. So, and if you can't go back, there's always different ways to make that happen. Floor plans, phone calls, virtual calls. There's so many ways
Yeah.
now in the world to keep that feedback loop going. So we all bring it back. Yeah.
Yeah. No, totally. I, I agree. Like it's all about one, I'm with you. I tend to like bring a little healthy dose of skepticism to somebody who thinks they're like 100% right about how to
Yeah.
design senior living full stop. It's so individually curated and should be that that's a dangerous claim to make, you know?
Yeah. 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 A good amount of skepticism is a good thing, right?
It is. Yeah. Yeah. And you know what, like what can we do besides generate data and like build consensus like that? Those are the tools of designers to me. It is fact finding. So you're gonna definitionally never know it all.
Yeah.
Yeah, I love that. And I think we were uh, to pull the curtain behind for our audience a little bit, we were talking a little bit before this just about how there's a big pipeline between empathetic design and research. And we were talking about your POE experience as part of that. Yeah, and that's definitely something that we feel too. Yeah, I don't know. Would be interested in just hearing from you guys. Like, hey, what are some other kind of like ways that research is informing your process?
Yeah. Yeah, certainly. I think, one of the things we're doing is like, what can we do ourselves? I know I was recently talking with an operator, and I feel like circadian lighting is one of those things that have been around for a very long time, but haven't quite figured itself out. But technology has really helped it out. I had a client recently talk to me about like, let's maybe look at in a renovation, what is the resident behavior beforehand, and let's implement it, and what is it afterwards. And I think it's those types of things that us as designers and communities are really looking like there's a lot out there that we know works and we have the evidence, and then there's stuff out there that we think works, right? And there's
Yeah,
enough that to go on. But I think as much as we can pull together evidence based, really relating it back to this is a business too, and what's the ROI on some of these things as we're looking to our clients and what they want to invest in and not. So as much evidence as we can get behind some of these decisions, I think it'll help the residents in the long term, making sure that what we're doing and spending our money on. So that's one I'm excited about
yeah.
to hopefully get going.
Yeah, totally agree. And then I'll fold in one too, just top of mind. I think I feel like we in this space talk a lot about the difference between lifespan and health span. Yeah,
Yes.
and I feel like there are so many cool opportunities to start like as designers talking about like, hey, how does like co-locating, beds and bathrooms. There's I'm sure you're familiar too, but
Hmm.
the kind of visibility phenomenon where if somebody in memory support
Yes.
sees a toilet, they're more likely to use the toilet,
Yeah.
and that's just that much longer that they can live more autonomously and have more
Yes.
choice and freedom and flexibility and all the good
Yeah.
stuff that we talk about.
Yeah. And
Yeah,
think about how simple that is, right? If you go into a project with that mindset and you do it from the beginning, it's so easy to implement those things if you're thinking about them early
yeah.
on and having that understanding. That's a great example, Trey. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. And they're like quiet things too, like you don't like go around advertising, look, you can
Yeah.
see our potties from the
Yes.
beds.
Yeah.
But
That's
but
really
it's
the
that
selling tool, right?
yeah, yeah, yeah. It's that often quiet like
Yeah.
falls into the background stuff, and it's almost like if you don't hear anything from it, then it's working perfectly.
Yeah, that's
Yeah.
exactly. Sometimes the
Yeah.
less you hear, the better off, right?
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
yeah. No, go design for aging. Yeah,
Yes. Yeah.
it's great. Well, awesome. Yeah, I think this has been an awesome conversation. Anything else you want to close it on?
No, yeah.
Any
I mean, I
closing
think,
statements? Yeah.
yeah, yeah. I think really going back to kind of really how we opened it and just really having the open mindset of continuing learning and evolving, right? So much of what
Yeah.
humility is.
Yep.
And then just when you put empathy on top of that and just really being open to learning someone else's experience, I think it's just such a beneficial thing in senior living. There are so many rules and regulations and very black and white things we do in senior living, but then there's
Yeah.
also this part of senior living that's a little bit of the softer side, less black and white, but really
Yeah.
can make a big difference in the outcome of senior living. So I'm glad we made space to talk about it today.
100%. Yeah, man, I could not have said that better.
Huh.
Well, yeah, thanks so much for coming on, Shannon. This has been a
Yeah,
blast. And for our listeners, if you liked this conversation and you're interested in learning more, check out the Sage website, already plugged at sagefederation.org. You can find this and all of our other episodes on our events page. And yeah, if you're interested in joining and becoming a member, like I said, everybody who's on this is a member. So if you want to get on this brilliant minds action, yeah, consider joining. We're a great group. And
yes.
yeah, until next time, it's been great having you on, Shannon.
Thank you so much.
Yeah.